You're listening to World of Empowerment Radio, your station for practical spirituality in a changing world. And here are your hosts, Angel Rose and Ahanu.
Okay, you're very, very welcome. This is Ahanu here again on the Honest to God series on World of Empowerment Radio. And Angel Rose is right here beside me. And she hasn't been well these last few weeks, but she's much better now.
That's right. I don't know if it's getting used to the different climate or I'm being attacked by the vortexes here or what. Well,
now, when you say here, it's important for our listeners to know that you're talking about Oregon. And there's
say that?
Well, I think the locals say Oregon.
Organ.
Organ. Almost like
an organ with an eye.
Like an organ. But, you know, I'm puzzled why we're actually here in a foot of snow when, in fact, your heart is in Clonakilty in Ireland. And I know that for a fact. So, Angel Rose, explain to our listeners what's the attraction about Clonakilty in County Cork in Ireland.
Well, we'd have to give a tiny bit of a history because last summer we were going around the west coast of Ireland collecting sacred earth waters. Mm-hmm. And we passed through Clonakilty, and the energy there was just so beautiful. And of course, there were swans.
Yes.
Where was that area? It wasn't a lake, was it? In the harbor?
Yeah.
Beautiful swans, beautiful energy, beautiful. What I noticed about the town was it was clean. Everything was painted nicely. The people actually felt like they had pride in where they lived. Mm-hmm. And I remember saying to you, now I could live here.
Yes, out of all the places, and we've visited all over Europe, but all over Ireland especially too, and all along the west coast. And in West Cork, it seemed to appeal to you in all kinds of
What was that one other town that we liked, that we almost wanted to buy that house that one time?
Well, that was closer to Skibbereen.
No, it wasn't Skibbereen, no. It was the place where that big beautiful house that we wanted to buy.
That was Clonakilty.
No, it wasn't Clonakilty.
Yes, it was.
Was it?
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
it's just outside the town. But anyway, here we are in a foot of snow, and we're talking about the
26 degrees Fahrenheit.
26 degrees Fahrenheit. I don't know what that is in centigrade,
but
cold, it's below freezing anyway. That's all you need to know. And our guest today is from Clonakilty, and that's why we bring it up. But before we bring on our guest, we want to talk a little bit about our subject matter today, about mental health. And we have found, Angel Rose, and our listeners will know, that a lot of times over the years, hundreds, if not thousands of people have contacted us about issues that they have, difficulties they have, and they've talked to us about suicide, and they've talked to us about depression, and in fact, wasn't it only a few weeks ago we put out a little questionnaire to our mailing list and asked people, what is it that we can help you with most? And the types of questions that they came back with were really ones of struggle with life, difficulties coping, anger issues, depression, sadness,
family issues,
relationship stuff, trying to cope with money, rising prices, difficulties general, but also some of those included were also ones about stuff going on in their head, like hearing voices and not knowing what's going on and not knowing what to act on. It's like having the devil and the saint on each shoulder, and one saying this thing and the other saying the other thing, and not really knowing what. Confusion, in other words.
Lack of clarity.
Lack of clarity, yeah. So,
and no strong sense of self, a lot of them.
Yes.
Because you don't have clarity, you don't know who you are. They're still asking, what's their purpose? Why are they here?
Yes.
Things like that.
Yeah. In fact, didn't we do a session when we were in Ireland one year, and this is probably 5 or 6 years ago now, I think, in Dublin, and we put out an announcement, an advertisement locally to people to come to a meeting in Dublin, and what we called it was, who am I and why am I here? Mm-hmm. And that was the single biggest response that we've ever had to any workshop anywhere. Isn't that right?
True. The room was full.
Absolutely packed. And it was, who am I and why am I here? So let's try and get to issues of mental health here. And our guest today is Erin ONeill, all the way from Clonakilty in Ireland, speaking to us as we are here in a foot of snow in Oregon. Erin,
Welcome.
Good afternoon to you.
Well, good evening to you guys. I hope you can hear me.
Yes, we got you loud and clear. You're very, very welcome. So tell us,
Great.
Erin, a little bit about yourself and how you got connected to the mental health issues in Ireland.
Well, my own story, it's a long story, but I can keep it as brief as possible, really, because I could speak for hours about it. People say you could write a book about it, so I have written a book, which will probably be out next year. But I suffered depression and anxiety since I was about 7 years old. I had a very, very tough childhood. It was a very difficult family I grew up in, and my mother and father made it obvious when I was a child that I just wasn't wanted.
Right. Yes.
In the house. I have to, even though I have two older brothers, so it was just made apparent that you aren't wanted, and it really didn't help me at all. And there was a lot of the mental abuse and physical abuse. There was not sexual abuse, thankfully, but the mental abuse I think was probably the worst, and it really got through to negative vibes were always getting through to my psyche the whole time, and I was showing signs at the time. There are only things I look back on now that I'm a counsellor. But at the time, I used to count how long did it take me to get, there used to be a patch of grass across from our house, and I'd walk home from school and cross that patch of grass, and I'd count to myself, how long did it take me? And what I was actually doing was actually a fantastic coping mechanism, which I didn't realize at the time. I was distracting myself, distracting my brain, because if I could distract myself, it wasn't real. So, yeah, so I had a teenage years, it didn't really get much better. In fact, it got a hell of a lot worse. And finally, I think it was 12, 13, and I went to a doctor, and the doctor sent me to see a counsellor.
At 13 years of age?
Yeah, I believe if even 13. I was rather 12, or I was on the cusp of 13. And I was sent to a counsellor, and one of my tormentors, being my father, had to bring me.
Right.
So I'll always remember that day going back to my house and having to tell him. Turns out by the time I got home, the doctor, because of the age I was, had already called my house and told them. And everyone was my family were around the table in fits of laughter. And it's just one of those images that will stick with you.
Right.
It just stuck with me because whatever stigma there is now, it's been decreased massively. But at the time, there was, a massive stigma around it.
Well, just a second there, Erin.
Yeah, sorry.
Just 1 second. There is a little bit of skip in the line, and if it does get worse, we will ask you to call back, because obviously that long distance there is it might be a little bit of an impediment. But we'll keep going for the moment. But what I want to ask you about that is, who initiated the contact with the doctor? I mean, was it your father? Did he recognise that he was abusing you in some way?
Well, actually, what happened was I made an excuse to go and see the doctor. I was pretending that I had a cold.
Okay.
So I made an excuse to go and visit with the doctor because I knew something wasn't right. Okay. So when I did meet with the doctor, I told him, I told him how I was feeling, that things didn't really feel right, that something wasn't quite right.
Yes.
So from there, he sent me to visit with the counsellor. And it was my father then who had to bring me. My first experience with a counsellor, and we went in, and the counsellor turned to my father and he said, "Well, what do you think is wrong with him then?"
Right.
And my dad said, "He needs a good beating. That's what's wrong with him."
Right. Yes.
So he asked my father to leave the room, and then he turned to me and says, "There's your issue there." And of course, thinking that I couldn't betray my father, I defended him, yes. Leading to an argument with the counsellor, and the counsellor saying to my doctor he would never see me again. So yeah, that was my first. That's really was my first involvement. Yeah. Went on.
Well, what you're describing there, Erin, I just wanted to say what you're describing there is traumatic, absolutely devastating. But at the same time, though, I venture to say a lot of people will resonate with it. I know, for example, in my own household, you're describing something very similar in my relationship with my father. And I've heard also over the years a lot of people describing very, very similar things. So in your experience, did you feel alone as that 12, 13-year-old? Did you feel completely isolated, or were there other children that felt the same as you?
I felt completely isolated. I was kind of known in school to be the kind of the weirdo, and I suppose looking back in it, I suppose I was called that so often I became to truly believe it, that I was the weirdo. And I was the kind of guy who had an elder brother who was fascinated with airplanes, and we used to go to the airport and he'd go look at the planes, which bored me, to be honest. And I used to go to arrivals because I loved the expression on people's faces when they saw each other, when people arrived, and the way they'd hug and the way they'd embrace each other. And it was something which I wasn't used to, because in our family, never mind hugging, we weren't allowed to smile, we weren't allowed to laugh, we weren't allowed to cry. They were all weakness. So to me, that was fascinating, and I loved to see these reactions from people. And it's something that's always interested me, and I suppose it's really no surprise that I kind of followed the path that I did.
Right, yeah. Now speak to us about that path. What moved you along then into your teenage years and your young adult years?
Well, what happened was I continued to suffer. I continued to suffer. And then I actually married my wife, and it was recorded on RTE television here in Ireland.
Okay.
For a program called Don't Tell the Bride.
Tell us more.
That raised a lot of anxiety. I knew No, I don't talk about it that often. I try not to talk about it that often, because it was very, very traumatic experience, and it's something that I don't like to relive, the actual experience itself, because it's the first time that I had a panic attack was the day before we started filming. And I spent the next 3 weeks being very sick, in and out of doctors and hospitals, and with blood pressure, and nobody knew what was happening to me. They thought it was an issue with my heart. And it was only after that, after we got married, that I noticed the anxiety and these panic attacks. These were a regular thing. However, it wasn't picked up by anyone as being that. No one picked it up. No one knew what it was. I went to see, we worked this out before, and I think it was between specialists and doctors. I think it was 18 or 19 of them that I went to see. I was tested from everything from Lyme's disease to AIDS. They just couldn't tell. I had brain scans. I had all sorts of scans. Nobody knew what was wrong with me. And what happened eventually, after the doctor assumed it to be, okay, maybe he had depression as a child. So I was experimented with almost 15 different types of antidepressant.
Wow.
Over the course of a couple of years, over the course of 3 years, 4 years maybe. So I was experimented, but eventually one day I went in with actually a cold, and I went in to see a doctor, and she was a very old school doctor. And she went in, I sat down, and I said, the usual small talk that you make with doctors, and the usual, how are you? Are you well? No, I'm not, or otherwise I wouldn't be here. But the doctor pointed out that she just looked at me and says, why are you sitting like that? And I said, like what? And she goes, you've got your shoulders up. And I said, do I? And she stood up, walked around, and she pressed into my neck. Now, I'm not sure the exact name of it, but it's where basically where the shoulder meets the neck, just with the gland running along there. She pressed in, and I screamed with the pain. And she said, and I remember the way she put it was ever so eloquently. She said, has anyone ever told you you've got anxiety?
Oh.
I said, what's that?
Right.
To me, anxiety was, when you're waiting for a bus, or the bus hasn't come, and that was anxiety, because that was that's all I knew anxiety to be.
Yes,
and she said to me that sometimes when you've checked everything and the problems not, you know, the problems. You don't have anything. We've checked everything. They thought I had meningitis at one stage. They checked absolutely everything. And they, you know, I was convinced I was dying of something. Something was killing me, and I didn't know what it was. And it turned out it was the thinking about anxiety was the thing that was killing me. Because with anxiety, it's the more you think about it, it's the more it gets you. And that's really the nature of the beast.
Right.
But it took me a long time to realise that.
Yeah.
I was sent to another counsellor, which was my second experience in my life with a counsellor. And the counsellor, we didn't get on really. I mean, it wasn't for sake of trying. I did try, you know, and I did very much try, but she was checking her mobile phone and looking out the window while I was talking to her. So it you know, it wasn't actually an ideal relationship. So I went and I found another counsellor, and I went privately.
Okay.
And she really helped. But there was one humongous turning point, one big change that happened to me, and it was about 3 years ago now. It was what I had was the anxiety had been building, and there were still a lot of issues with my family. There still is. And I got up in the morning to go to work, and I literally just fell back on the bed. And then I just crawled up to my wife and I said, I can't do this. And she says, can't do what? And she says, I just can't go. I can't do it. I can't do any of this. I can't do, this is it. I can't go any further than this. So that led to a bit of a breakdown. They call it a nervous breakdown, but I don't think anyone knows what the hell that actually even means. Nervous breakdown. So I did have a breakdown, and I was, for the next few weeks, everything was a bit of a blur. I know there was doctors here. I know I ended up in really strange places, and it just was all so overwhelming. And it was worrying because they say that people who commit suicide aren't, you know, they're not fully aware. Actually, I don't like the phrase commit suicide. People that take their own lives, they're not aware of what it is that they're doing.
Yeah.
And I think given the places I ended up in, I ended up on the beach a few times, and the beach is a fair few miles from the house. I had no idea how I got there. I had no recollection of being there, except for my wife coming and finding me there.
Yes.
And then there was it kind of came to a head. It was Christmas time, and I actually ended up out by a lighthouse staring down at the waves below me. I got home, and the police were at my house. And they wanted to take me to a psychiatric unit. And it was then I realised, hang on, what am I doing?
Yes.
It was just an epiphany that, hang on a sec, what's going on here? Why is this happening to me? It's like I just had a little moment of clarity. You know, I looked and I saw how much I'd upset everyone, but more so what I'd actually become. You know, I'd become this person living on autopilot. You know, I was out of work a few months, and it just came to this, and I said, hang on, I've got to fix this. I need to fix this. Yeah. I can't go on doing this.
Tell me this, Erin. Yeah. How did you find everything else in your life? You know, your relationships, your work, your day-to-day. Like, was everything affected, or was it only, did you feel it was only what was going on in your own head, you know, your own anxiety? Do you understand my question?
Everything was affected. Everything, absolutely everything. And every relationship with every single person. Right. My wife, my children. And, you know, it hurts me so much to say, but where our second child, when our second child was born, I became convinced that she didn't like me. Which is a ridiculous notion now when I look back and see how much affection she actually had and has now towards me. Right. I became convinced in my head, and nothing anyone was going to say would convince me otherwise. Like, I'm a self-righteous git at the best of times, but at that stage I would have disagreed with it. Anything you said about me was wrong. Anything you said about anyone else towards me is wrong.
Tell me this. When you got that, let's call it a diagnosis, just for want of a better word, when you got the diagnosis that you were suffering from anxiety, was that in itself some kind of a release for you, in the sense that, you were now pigeonholed, and that, somebody at least now knew what was wrong, and maybe there was a solution or an answer to it? Or did it open up a whole new can of worms in the whole area of, a mental health label that was put on you?
Okay, well, there's two answers to that. The first answer is yes, I did get relief because I knew there was a name for it, and physically there didn't appear to be anything wrong. Like, for example, the meningitis was because of the stiffness in the neck, which was caused by anxiety.
Right.
Because obviously you tense everything up. So that was caused by anxiety. But the other side of the coin was it did open a can of worms because there's so little information or knowledge out there about what is anxiety, how does how do you get rid of anxiety? And it was a mystery to me. And I think over the next few months, I learned the biggest possible thing was never try and self-diagnose yourself or find out things, because people don't post good things on the internet, on forums. They don't post good things. You're only going to hear how bad someone else's life is.
Yes.
And it doesn't help when you're in that state of mind.
Yeah. Just hold on one moment there, because when you say a good outcome, there is a good outcome that we want to come to, and we want to talk about your work in the whole area of mental health and your involvement with Let's Talk Mental Health. But we do need to take a very, very quick little studio break, and stay with us. And let's just quickly remind our listeners that we're speaking with Erin ONeill from Let's Talk Mental Health, all the way from Clonakilty in Ireland. So we'll be right back after this break.
Years of research, thousands of profound statements, hundreds of sessions, miles of transcripts, months of listening, a vast archive of personal power and spiritual awareness awaits you. Join worldofempowerment.com today, a members-only website of practical spirituality for your fast-changing world. worldofempowerment.com.
And you're very welcome back to our show today with Erin ONeill from beautiful Clonakilty, Ireland. So, Erin, it's quite a story that you've told us, and I'm sure there's other people who have gone through or are still going through the same sort of thing. So I'm very interested in how you got yourself out of quote-unquote anxiety, and how would you define it these days, and what did you do to get yourself out of it?
Well, with the anxiety, I realized there were so many different things out there. So I started looking at the things that I did, and I stopped looking at things that other people were telling me to do. People who hadn't suffered anxiety were coming up with sort of solutions as to this is how you'll get rid of it. I have no idea what's going on with you, but this is bound to work because they read it in a book somewhere. So I came up with little techniques for myself. I noticed certain things that nighttime was particularly bad time because I would suffer with tinnitus, which is a really loud ringing in the ears. And I would also clench my fists, and I would have, I ended up with TMJ, which is extreme jaw clenching. Now, anybody with anxiety knows at least one or two of these three things. I had three of them.
Wow.
So I start coming up with techniques as to how can I get rid of these. So I tried out some techniques that didn't work, and then I found something that did. Like, I found something simple. I thought to myself, well, if I place the tip of my tongue where the palate of my mouth meets, where the gum meets with the top teeth, if I place the tip of the tongue there, it's physically impossible for me to clench really hard. I can't do it.
Wow.
So I started doing it every day until it became a habit.
Yes.
And I still do it now every day without thinking about it, and it got rid of it permanently. I've never had it since.
Wow. Well, now, interestingly, Erin, just on that very point alone, Angel Rose has experience of using that similar technique. What's it called, Angel Rose? I remember you telling me about it.
Oh, when you close the microcosmic orbit. when you put your tongue on the roof of your mouth, you make a circuit, an energetic circuit throughout your whole system.
Yes, yes. And I have my own experience of it too, I have to tell you, because I was in a plane accident many, many years ago in the desert in Egypt, and where there was a pressure drop. And like you, I was suffering from tinnitus as a result of the pressure in my ears. And one time, we're talking a good number of years ago now, Deepak Chopra came to Ireland. And I sat with him side by side on the couch, and he gave me a technique. The consultation all in all took about 3 or 4 minutes. And his solution was for me to do exactly like you described, touch the tip of my tongue to the roof of my mouth. But I was to say this sound as in the sound of M for mother, And I did that once, and immediately the tinnitus went and the ringing in the ears went, and I never suffered from it since. But I believe that you stumbled upon a very, very interesting physical technique that Angel Rose calls the what did you call it?
Microcosmic orbit.
Microcosmic orbit, that obviously was relieving you of the stress. So go ahead and tell us of the other techniques.
What I did was at night time to relieve, I realized that to get rid of tinnitus, all I would have to do is to not think about tinnitus. And what I did was start using meditations. And I started with very basic meditation. And for me, it distracted my brain. Right. And I realized, hang on a sec, this distracts my brain and it makes this tinnitus go away. So what else can distracting my brain do? So I start then looking at my shoulders, and so many people, nearly everyone actually carries their stress there. So I said, right, what can I do here? So I lay down and I start working out. I said, what relieves this? How can I, get rid of it? And I worked out a couple of breathing. I didn't work out. I used some very common breathing techniques, which did help. But I also used other techniques like sitting on the ground with my legs folded, and I would pretend that there was a string. I'd let my shoulders drop down as much as possible. I'd breathe as slowly as I possibly could, and I would pretend there was a piece of string just pulling my head back up straight. And it really, really helped, massively, massively helped. But also a very, very popular technique called the 7-11 technique, whereas you breathe in for 7 seconds and out for 11, and you drop your shoulders each time you breathe out. And that was massively, massively beneficial to me.
Wow.
So I was well on my path to recovery. And then the biggest thing to come along was a guy by the name of Charles Linden. And I discovered that he had a method, and I was thinking, this is probably a scam. I said, this is probably not what it's, saying. I even admitted this. I've spoken now to Charles, and I'll tell you a bit more about that in a sec. But I thought, this is a scam. This isn't going to work. He had a method, and it involved a couple of weeks, and following his different techniques. He uses what he calls his 9 pillars. And I did that, and ever since I've never had a panic attack. I've never had anything close to a panic attack, and my anxiety is minimal.
Gosh.
Erin, can you repeat his name again? Because when you were telling us his name, the computer skipped a little bit.
Oh, okay. His name is Charles Linden.
Linden. Okay.
Linden, yeah.
Okay,
He's developed a method, and it works for me. And so when I was feeling better, when I felt really, really good and really, really positive, I was thinking, you know what? I feel I can really help other people here.
Okay.
And so I start going to local support groups, and I noticed that nobody was showing up.
Okay.
Because there is that stigma still.
Yes.
And I said, okay, well, what else can I do? And I said, hang on a second. I found a conferencing solution that I could use that I would have complete control over. People could just phone in using a free telephone number and a passcode. I could moderate the call, so I, as the host, could see who's on the call. Mm-hmm. I could dismiss anyone who's, the dog's barking in the background or anything like that. I could dismiss them or I could mute their line. And I said, well, this is perfect.
Right.
So really,
you were overcoming the objection of people exposing themselves. You were doing it anonymously, effectively. Yeah.
So what I was thinking is, my whole thinking behind it was, well, if we could get, firstly, the fact that it was a man setting it up would definitely help, because when we look at the suicides in Ireland, it's made up. The majority is made up of men. Men are the most likely to go and do it, and women are the most likely to threaten it, because men don't speak.
Right.
We just don't. I do.
And I do know that
they shut me up most of the time, but I speak.
Yeah, the suicide rate is off the charts in Ireland now, and indeed in a lot of other countries, it's increasing, alarming.
It is.
Yeah.
It is, and so we started initially we had the idea that if we got guest speakers on, this could really help us. This would really push us along and get people to talk, and it did. We were amazed and who wanted to speak to us, because people love the idea that this is anonymous, and no one has to say who they are. No, people can come on. They know that they're secure because they couldn't have got the passcode unless they got it from me. I can see who they are. I have note of everyone's number.
Yeah. So
I can make sure everything is entirely secure. But we had some massive speakers on, and as we looked at it, then we started to grow. I realised that Northern Ireland has the second highest suicide rate in Europe. And I said, okay, well, we need to sort that one out. So we did. We started giving out numbers for Northern Ireland. And then we moved into the UK. Before we knew it, we were in Belgium, we were in France, we were in Spain, we were in the US.
So when you say we, who are you talking about now? Give us the organisation.
Okay. What it is myself, I'm the founder of it. I run a lot of what we do is through our Facebook page. It's how we communicate with a lot of people. However, the majority of it is done behind the scenes, because we obviously don't want to, we don't want to expose people's, private information. So, but what we are is we're a group made up of myself. I have 4 administrators, one of whose birthday it is today, so happy birthday, Lisa. So we have the 4 of them, and what we do is we constantly monitor. We have, through our website, we have an email we can be contacted at. We have a Facebook page we can be contacted at. We have those numbers at which we can be contacted at, and we speak every single week. And what we do is the page is constantly monitored. It's constantly watched. Everyone who comes in, pharmaceutical companies who are trying to get in and to get people's information, and they wanted to market. They were researchers from pharmaceutical companies wanted to market. So ever since then, now we have really stringent processes about people joining the group. We need to know, why. We first express that everything you say is completely confidential, but we do need to know why, just for safety of themselves and for other people as well. No, we avoid triggers on our group page. We avoid triggers. We don't mention, you don't say, if you come along and say something like, you would have seekers and then you have people who need the help, and you need to differentiate it. So we are doing that, and we do that constantly, who genuinely needs the help. So often we'll just check in with people across the group, send them a message, flick them a message between myself and all the administrators. Are you okay? Is there anything I can do? Just to touch base with those people and try and convince them to get onto the calls.
Yes.
Because they don't regret it. Anyone who's ever been on one of our calls never ever regrets it.
Yes.
We have a guy by the name of Liam Kennedy, and he's probably one of the most inspirational people I've ever had the pleasure to know. He does a lot of work for mental health services over in Liverpool, and he helps our group, and he's known as the mental health warrior, and it's really what he is. He comes on, he inspires. We get massive amounts of people on our call when we get him on. He's extremely inspirational, and we love him. We love having him on our calls.
Yes, yeah.
And it's people like that just keep people going, just give people that hope, and
yeah. I want to ask you, Aaron, in terms of the help, I mean, I can understand how when somebody speaks about it, like the very act of speaking and knowing that you're in a safe environment and being able to voice your issues and your problems is a huge help. So I don't want to what I'm trying to get at is that where your help stops, or do you then go on to the mainstream Western medical model and say, oh, I'm referring you to a doctor to take all these antidepressant pills, or where do people go once they've finished speaking with you on the hotline, let's call it?
They don't go anywhere. They stay with us.
Okay.
What we do is I myself, I'm a qualified suicide counsellor, NLP practitioner, mindfulness practitioner, cognitive reorganization practitioner, and general therapist as well. So I don't tell people go and get some medication, because I know what that's like.
Yes.
And it's because I know what that's like that I never advise people to go and take some pills. There was a study recently done in Ireland where one woman went to 15 doctors in Waterford, and she went in and into each doctor, 14 out of the 15, she was out within 10 minutes with a prescription for several types of medications. And only one doctor said to her, maybe you should see a counsellor or a therapist.
Yes.
Or, maybe you should try this. And, I've tried, I'm always open. And what I do is I try new things. And recently it was microcurrent treatment I was trying. And I come back then and give my honest feedback to the group about it, but I'll always be bluntly honest with the group, whether they like it or not. Sometimes I'm bluntly honest.
Do you recommend to them the techniques that you discovered yourself, like the tongue technique you mentioned, the meditation, the breathing, and the sitting, and the 7-11 technique? Do you recommend those to the group?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, whatever I have taken on board, whatever I take on board, I pass the group. I don't keep anything hidden from them. Even if I've had let's say if I've had a shit day myself, I'll be more than happy to come on and tell the group, I had a shit day today, but you know what, tomorrow's another day. That was then, and this is now, and who knows what's going to happen in the next minute. And I'll put to them the way I deal with a shit day, so they know then that, okay, it's not necessarily that bad.
Yes.
And what we're doing is giving that voice of hope, but we don't, we're a platform for people to seek help for themselves.
Right.
But the last thing I would say to someone is go and get some pills, because that's, nah.
Yeah.
Been there, done that. And
Sure.
I'll be bluntly honest with anyone if they ask me. Maybe they work for some people, but no, I would never advocate them, though.
Yeah. Okay. Now, give us an idea of the format that this would take. Is it the case that, like in the Native American Indian system of a talking stick, is it that only one person can talk at a time, or is it a kind of everybody trying to speak at the same time? Give us an idea of how that works. Okay.
What we would generally do is the format of it. We'd do an introduction, we'd do some house rules. Mm-hmm. What we would then do is we often, I'd say 90% of the time, we have a speaker. So the call usually lasts about an hour and a half. So the speaker would speak for about 40 minutes. Mm-hmm. And what we do then is open the lines so people can ask the speaker questions.
Okay.
Now, no one knows who's asking the question, so we open them. But we do at the start, when we're going through the house rules, say that when someone is speaking, to please just allow them to speak.
Okay.
And if it is the case that there's multiple people speaking, I can mute lines.
Yes, I believe what you're doing and what you've created there is an absolutely wonderful service and a fantastic forum for people to find the kind of relief that they're seeking. Does anybody give you feedback in terms, something that can be measurable in the sense that, if it wasn't for you, I'd be dead now, or if it wasn't for you, I'd be out on the street? Or do people give you some kind of a measure of how effective your program is?
Yeah, well, obviously I'm in West Cork, but even further west in Cork, there's a place called Lishane's House, run by an extremely courageous woman called Noreen Murphy. She won't mind me mentioning that. No. She she lost her husband. He took his own life, and I think one of the things that she now runs a suicide counselling centre, and she takes people in there, and she gets free therapists in there, free counsellors. We do a bit of work and we donate when we can to her. But what she did was she came on a call to tell us about what she does and how it all works. And one of the things that really got me, and it brought a tear to my eye, because I realised that this thing I had is working. She said, had this group existed 3 years ago, I think my husband would still be alive.
Right, yeah.
So it is powerful, and we have people in Ireland, and we have some quite famous people who come on our calls, and they say people don't realise that other people that feel the same way they do. Mm-hmm. And that's really comes back to, again, why I set it up. Because people are going, oh God, what if this is wrong with me? What if that is wrong with me? And I'm saying, stop. Just breathe. And, just live in right now and don't worry about the rest.
Well, now, unfortunately, we are coming to the close of our programme today. And Erin ONeill, we want you, and I know our listeners will certainly want the information about how to get in touch with you. So if you can give us all those contact details.
We will. I'll pass them on to you, no problem at all.
Give them to us on the air, if you don't mind.
Yeah, okay. Well, the best way to contact us, how most people will get to us, and the most memorable way would be going to www.letstalkmentalhealth.com.
Okay, let's talk.
And from there, you will see the various links through to our email, through to our Facebook group, through to our Twitter page. Everything is there for you to reach out to us.
Great. Now, you mentioned that you do have groups. I'll have to just make this the final question, if you could squeeze it in as quickly as you can. You mentioned that you have groups in Belgium and various other European countries. So obviously what you're doing is capable of being duplicated. Now, our audience is in Europe and throughout the United States. So if somebody wanted to set up something similar, can they do the same thing in any country?
Yeah, absolutely. It could be done. It can be done anywhere. The way I have it, I have about 100 numbers worldwide that I can give out that will be, completely free. Well, it's free. The sense of toll free, toll free in the world of what we do means we pay the charge. But yes, it can be done. But we highly recommend that you use something secure. We use a solution called Global Meet, which is extremely secure. But I recommend using something secure that people know that's safe. They know it's being monitored. But yes, it can be done, and by sharing experiences, good experiences, positive experiences, not this shit that I'm never going to get better and things, are always going to remain the same. It is possible, it is achievable, but anybody can do it. If I can do it, and I'm a lazy person, if I can do it, anyone can do it. I really, really live by that. If I can do it, anyone can, and you can get well, you can help others.
Well, now, that is an absolutely inspiring story, and I am delighted that we connected with you and that you shared this information with our audience, because, as I said at the outset, it's shocking, really, the numbers of people out there that are struggling and suffering in silence on all kinds of issues, and not knowing that there is help available. And the type of help you're providing is obviously very, very practical, very clear, very easy, and very effective. So it's been a real pleasure to have you on, Erin. We do quickly apologise to our listeners because the line hasn't been that great. There has been a little bit of skip here and there, but we think that people will get the gist of the message very clearly from you.
I agree. This is fantastic, Erin, and you're providing a lot of help.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you for coming on.
Yeah.
No problem at all. And congratulations on what you guys are doing as well. I've been listening to a lot and watching a lot, and it's very, very interesting stuff.
Good, yeah, good. Well, we'll post your contact information on the World of Empowerment website as well, so people can get you in contact with you there, and it goes out to a good audience as well. So Again,
Super.
thank you so much, and take care of yourself. And hopefully, the next time we're back in Clonakilty in West Cork,
We'll
Angel
have
Rose.
lunch.
Yeah, Angel Rose
Yeah.
will most certainly be delighted to meet you. Yeah.
Absolutely perfect. That's superb.
All right. You take
Okay.
care. Thank you.
All right. Take care. See you guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
You have been listening to Angel Rose and Ahanu on World of Empowerment Radio, your station for practical spirituality in a changing world.